Greetings, everyone. I would like to address today misprision of felony. Okay, now I had recently called up, and you may be able to use this information, especially for those that are to be persecuted, those that are being persecuted as it is right now. You may also want to send this on, this video, to those that are working toward violating this misprision of felony. I had recently called a senator's office and I spoke to the receptionist, and what you get with most government agencies, employees, elected officials and such, when you call their office, they always try to send you off to get this legal help. And you know, they're all in cahoots with the lawyers, the attorneys and such, you know, the judges and everything else. That's what President Trump has been crying out against. I'm crying out for judgment. Very few are hearing my voice, and right now the internet's down, so I'm hoping that it will come up again so that I'll be able to post this, but who knows what this world is going to bring upon us in these last days. Now, I had reported many felonies that were committed by certain oppressors that came against me. You can see these things in my videos, but it's not for me that I'm bringing this. I'm bringing this for the elected officials that think that they're above the law, totally above the law, and it's up to us to inform them that they're not. Now, when I called the senator's office, the woman kept telling me that I shouldn't. In fact, there's a video of it that I made just prior to this video. I've been under the weather the last few days, otherwise I'd have brought it earlier. And remember, if you're a Christian or a Catholic or Baptist or anything of this sort, of the churches, and you believe some of what the scripture says, or claim that you believe it all, well, our king did state in there, and I was trying to look it up. You can see up at the top here, I've got Proverbs 17, Psalms 35 I brought up, but I was looking for the scripture that talks about where our king had stated that the things they've done against him, they'll also do against you, if you believe them. Okay, he was called the Beelzebul, prince of demons, all sorts of things. Said that he wasn't keeping the laws and commandments, which he was. And, of course, the greatest misprision of felony ever took place was against our king. So he does promise these things to come upon those that actually follow him. You won't have your voice heard until a specific time that Enoch spoke about. But we still have to cry out for judgment. We still have to lift our voice up when we see there are these felonies taking place. We have to report these things to an elected official, somebody in civil authority, things of this sort we'll get into. But what I'd like to do is show to this woman, the secretary, and everybody else, any office that you call, and they give you the same runaround about getting you an attorney who's not going to do anything. They're all agents for the courts anyway. Now, of course, these people here, they do go out and they defend people for the misprision of felony, and sometimes they're successful, but sometimes they're not. You know, sometimes the evidence is just overwhelming, and pretty soon people are going to hear. But anyway, this here is a criminal defense lawyer published by NOLO. There's others down here that you can contact. They've got here showing you can contact them all or whatever. They've got people in New York as well, for those senators in New York and secretaries who think that it's all right not to pass on felonious activities that's reported to them, and to be silent is all right. So this is what we're going to do, is show what an attorney tells you to do, or a bunch of attorneys, and I'll just read it off for you so that you get a great idea of the horrible things that are taking place right now, and nobody is reporting it except for me, and others maybe as well, with 144,000, or even others outside of that number, and they're being totally ignored. And these elected officials think that it's all right and that you need an attorney. Well, I'm telling them at this video that they need to get an attorney, otherwise they need to pass on the information. And of course, you know, here they've helped 95 clients find attorneys today. Well, you know, every time I've clicked onto this site, they've always helped 95 clients find attorneys today. Like I say, I've been under the weather, so please forgive my cough. I hope that's the most of it. Anyway, it says misprision of felony is a crime that occurs when someone knows a felony has been committed but fails to inform authorities about it. And here's a general overline of on the states. Okay, this has nothing to do yet. We'll get down here to the federal law, what it says, but this is basically for the states and such. It says the crime originated in English common law and required that citizens report crimes of face criminal prosecution. Common law is law originating from custom and court's decisions rather than statutes. Okay, in other words, they were saying things that were of morality used to be able to be taken into court, such as if a man went off to war and he come back and found out his wife was taken over by some other fella. Well, he would be able to have taken him to court, sued him for doing such a thing, but then they made these statutes instead, no longer allowed it to be a criminal activity for another man to sleep with another man's wife. So it came to be smiled upon more, to where our morality in this country here alone is hit the dirt pretty hard, you know, and it's gasping for air, you know, and nobody wants to speak out about it. Well, that's what I'm doing, and usually whenever I explain something to, you know, a government official or a elected official or an employee of the government of whatever status, you know, whether it's county or town or city or state or whatever it is, they usually meet me on head on, you know, with bulldozing me or burning me out or throwing me into jail and trying to murder me, you know, with starvation for 44 days they didn't feed me. But does anybody hear these things? Oh, absolutely not. Does people want to hear it? Take a look at my views. You'll see my last one got about 11 views on it because I'm crying out. And people don't want to hear this. They want to think that their government is doing them just fine. But anyway, common law is law originating from custom and court decisions rather than statutes. Due to the harshness of imprisoning people merely for failing to report a crime, most cases, or most states, chose not to include misprision of felony in their criminal laws. Okay, well that's fine. Instead, conduct that would fit the misprision definition is covered by other laws, such as those dealing with the accomplice liability. And that's, you know, also laws that may pertain to New York State or Ohio or wherever you are, it may be, but we're not discussing these state laws. That's not what this is about. This is a federal law, okay? First enacted into the U.S. law in 1789. Misprision of felony in the federal system is a felony punishable by a fine and up to 3 years in prison. Okay, so when you send this off to governmental agencies for not acting upon felonies that you made them aware of, please pass this video to them. Explain to them so that they don't have to go to prison. All they have to do is pass it on. It'll show you here. It says the common law rule criminalized simply knowing about a felony and not notifying the authorities. But contemporary federal law also requires that the defendant take some affirmative act to conceal the felony. Okay, now an affirmative act to conceal the felony is simply not reporting it. When you let them know they had an obligation, a duty for their elected office to report the felony, then they have concealed it because they did not pass it on. It's not our fault that nobody listens to us poor folk, okay, and those of us that are being oppressed by the system by the government, by those acting so that they can become wealthier for whatever purpose it is, you know, to gain greater power, things of this sort. They choose to keep their mouths shut and allow the constituency, you know, to just suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer while they grow a little bit higher in power. And also gain favors. They get to go to these sex parties or whatever. I have no idea what it is that they desire to get out of covering up these crimes, these felonies, but they're doing it, and it's going on all the time. As you can see, that's why I'm making this video, because they refuse to hear me, just like Enoch had said. But he said to cry out for judgment. That's what I'm doing now. And it says here, the crime has 4 elements. A completed felony. Okay, well, I disclosed misappropriation of federal funds. That's a felony. Okay, I disclosed it going on. I showed where they're using the money to actually murder people. They murdered me with it. They're using these funds that are mixed in with the city or county or state or the federal funds. When they get sent up to whatever municipality or whatever, it gets mixed in with the funds from the federal government sending them. So therefore, there's no way to be able to separate them. And when there's a misappropriation of funds, public or federal funds, it's a felony. I exposed this. I sent information out to, you know, almost 100 different law enforcement, government, and news agencies, and I've received not one reply. Even from the last the video I made, where I made a phone call and explained it to that governmental office, the felonies that had taken place. It fell on deaf ears. They told me to get an attorney. So I've got this attorney's website right here, and I'm showing her as well as the gentleman, which I don't want them to be able to say I'm harassing them by trying to make them do what they've been commissioned to do. But it's things that, you know, these people hate, is that I know more about their duties and their responsibilities than they do, and so therefore, you know, I expect some sort of retaliation. I don't know if state police will show up at my house here at any time soon just to take me away for littering or something. Who knows what they'll put me in jail for the next time or what they'll do. But I have to do it. You know, our King says we have to do it. Our Heavenly Father told us that if we see an injustice done, we're not to keep our mouths shut. You know, if you see somebody, you know, that hasn't done something that was wrong, then you're to stand up for that person. You're not to allow them to be, and they can't even put me to death right now for some reason. No, I've cried out many times after they bulldoze me, they burn me, they Trojan me, they burn me. You know, cut my head off, damn it. You know, why is it that you keep sending me back out into this damnable world, this unclean, defiled place, you know, after you take everything that I own, everything I work for? You won't even let it go to a court. No investigation's ever done on it. And all you do is kick me to the side of the road, and you won't even hear my cries. Well, I'm crying again. And I'm going to send this off to you. And one of these days, before too long, even this video is going to be used as evidence against you in a court if you've been keeping these things quiet. Okay, so that's one of the 4 elements, a completed felony. Yes, they have that. I've reported it. The defendant, and they're talking about, say, the elected official or whatever that won't do anything about it, they are considered this defendant. The defendant knowing about the felonies commission. Absolutely. I put it in videos and such, okay? Like I said, I made a phone call to him. It says the defendant failing to notify a proper law enforcement authority, okay? They refused to send it on to law enforcement because it would get their buddies in trouble. You know, these elected officials are supposed, you know, most of them anyway, from what I understand, are probably reptilian anyway. You know, they're seeds of the snake, of the serpent that it talked about. The woman would step on their head and bruise their head with her heel, you know, and the heel would be bruised by their head, and that's what's taking place. Anyway, the defendant taking some affirmative step to conceal the felony. Now, to conceal the felony is just not saying anything when it's reported to them. That is steps to conceal it. They have the power, they have the elected authority to report these things, but they don't want to hurt their fellow man. And their fellow man, of course, are those that either give them favors or they can get favors from as they rule over the people with this corruption. That's actually what this is. To conceal the felony is nothing other than obstruction of justice. These people are guilty of these things, and they just keep covering up for one another. So here under the federal law, this is the statute, the 18 U.S.C., United States Code, Section 4, subsection 4. It says, typical acts of concealment include making false statements, hiding evidence, and harboring the felon. Whether someone's actions amount to concealment is for the jury to decide. Now, in my experience, they don't even allow jury trials. I've paid for jury trials. I've had the other side pay for jury trials, and they refused a jury trial to even be convened because they knew the jury would definitely not allow my properties to be burned or bulldozed without any proper notice, even with a demolition order for the wrong property, bulldozing me, then later trying to put me in prison, using misappropriated funds to file frauds in court against me. I proved it to be so the judge let everybody go. I didn't go to prison. I didn't have to pay each of those misappropriating your funds, your tax dollars, as seed money, because they each had, there were 10 plaintiffs against me. Each of them wanted in excess of $10,000 each from me, using your taxpayer dollar as seed money to do this, and they wanted me in prison for 10 years. But I've got the greatest attorney of all. He's Yeshua, our King. And our King guided me through these things. They're all implicated. It's all in the court record. They should all be in prison, but they're helping each other, even the different states. These things took place in Texas. Here I'm crying out, for even senators of New York State to go ahead and just report the crime. It's what they have to do. You'll see here. It says, but if he lies to the police, well, let's say, whether someone's actions amount to concealment is for the jury to decide. Suppose Marty knows his neighbor Biff is growing marijuana. Marty wouldn't be guilty of federal misprision simply for remaining silent. But if he lies to the police about Biff's growing, he's committed the crime. Now, please understand, this is a citizen. It's not... It's not an elected official it's talking about here. This is talking about a fella's neighbor knowing he's growing marijuana. Okay? And he doesn't say anything. So he's not so much committing the crime unless the police ask him, and then he says, no, I don't know nothing about it. Well, then he would be committing the misprision. So let's take a look what it further says by this team of attorneys that has this website up here. It says, although the crime has a broad definition, misprision prosecutions are uncommon. And why is that? Because people just don't know about them. And they're not being allowed to be prosecuted because the justice system is protecting known felons that are elected by the people, and the people think they're wonderful people that are doing these felonies because it's not allowed to be heard that they're doing so. And that's what I'm doing. I'm crying out for judgment, and I'm crying out against these criminals that are in your government. I mean, I should be awarded these things. Evildoers should be prosecuted, and those that do right should be rewarded, And all I'm asking is that an investigation be done on these people that have, time after time, considered my rights as nothing and my life as nothing. It says here, prosecutors usually reserve misprision charges for people with special duties to report crimes. Well, who would these special people that have special duties to report crimes, who would they be? Look at this. such as prison guards and elected officials. So there you have it, Madame, the secretary of that senator's office, that I sent information to you. I gave you emails, I showed you the felonies being committed, and like it says, you have special duties to report crimes, such as prison guards and elected officials. Now, as far as prison guards, I'll tell you a gross little story. In Texas, in Taylor County of Texas, Abilene, Texas, they have a probation department. Now, in the probation department that they force, and if you don't go, if you've been in jail or whatever and you've got probation, they make you go up to this place, and they've got on the wall, okay? They have on the wall a question. It says, what do you like most about going back to prison or jail? And it'll show, you know, an orange uniform. It'll show these nasty things that they try to call food on plates that they give you. They show a few different things, you know, and they got the pictures, you know, side by side. And then at the very bottom picture, in the bottom middle, it's got a bar of soap sitting on a goddamn drain. Okay, so I guess you could tell what that would be used for. And here you got prison guards that make bets and such, the wardens and everything else, about how long this fellow will get along there or whatever before he gets sodomized, or how many will sodomize him, or what. They make these bets and everything else. They allow these men to fight in, the ring, kill each other even, for the satisfaction of the guards and, the wardens. I mean, there's movies and such on these things. These things are taking place, but people don't want to see it. They want to close their eyes and hide their head in a damn hole, shovel sand into their ears, so that no one can see that they see, so they can live in peace. Well, there is no peace when you conceal these things. And like it says, although the crime has a broad definition, misprison prosecutions are uncommon. Prosecutors usually reserve misprison charges for people with special duties to report crimes, such as prison guards and senators and congressmen and anyone that's an elected official. And this also goes to, like prison guards. They are elected, or not elected, but they are employees of a state, or right now mostly private contractors that allow torture and everything else going on. And nobody can hear, because when people cry out for it and they tell their senators and such, they cover their ears to protect their buddies in the prison system. Okay, and that's what's going on here. And elected officials. These are special ones with special duties to report crimes. That said, nothing in the statute's language limits it to such cases. The authorities, and like it says in the book of Enoch, continuously, the ones that came against me, it keeps saying the authorities who did these things and this and that, and they're the ones that came against me and destroyed me. They're using your tax dollars to do it, whether you like it or not. I'm being prosecuted. Enoch wrote about me. Your king wrote about me. I didn't ask for it to be written. I didn't ask to have this life, okay? And it tells us to cry out for judgment, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm crying out for judgment. If you got ears, please hear. Please do something about this. Don't let these people keep on doing these things, okay? They're going to their special parties and everything else and covering up for one another, and it needs to stop. Chop off my damn head, will you? I've asked you how many times. Every time you burn me out, every time you bulldoze me, it's like, chop off my damn head. Give me judgment, give me justice, or chop off my head. Don't let me live like this on a measly, disability payment that I get because I was forced to go out and find employment when they bulldozed my businesses, and the result of that, a direct result, was my becoming disabled on the job. And I get nothing for it. And every time they burn me out, I lose everything, and I got to start all over again. I got my food storage and everything, and I got everything I need. I'm just comfortable. Next thing you know, a bulldozer pulling up, or a Trojan, or somebody just starting a fire, and even known who done it. And they won't do anything because they're guilty of misprisons, felony misprisons. Please shout this out. Send this off to your congressmen, your senators and such. Let them know that you know about it. Just find an email, send it off, keep record. And that way when the time comes and they try to say, well, I didn't know nothing about it, really. Well, why did this email send this to you? You as a public servant, it's your duty to read each and every one of the emails or letters that are sent to you in your office. That's your duty. And things you got to act on, you're supposed to act on. And things you're not supposed to act on should have statutes telling you you shouldn't. But this is not one of those things. This is felonies that I'm reporting, federal crimes that you're covering up for by not saying anything. You know, you're no worse than them women, and you can take a look right now. You know, there's women that are being prosecuted in different states because they had boyfriends that ended up murdering their children or badly damaging them, and it was going on for a while, and they said nothing. So what's going on? They're going to prison as well because they said nothing. And you people are just as guilty as this that are doing so and being silent. You know, you senators, you congressmen, you judges, you law officials, you anyone that's of civil authority that it's reported to. Any of you judges are in the military, and I've reported to everyone and never got a comment back. Let's shout out, people. I can't do this alone. I need your help as well. We need to inform these elected officials of their duties and that they're lacking in them and that they're looking at a prison term if they don't start. The authorities might invoke it for certain types of crime where the government wants. To encourage reporting. Like treason and terrorism. Well, guess what? Burning a church down and a hate crime is terrorism. And I reported terrorism. And what do? I hear nothing, speak nothing, I saw nothing. You're on your own, buddy, you know. Welcome to America. You don't like it, move the hell out. I mean, these things are so ridiculous, my friends, you know. We need some help in this. Let's do what Enoch said. He said to cry out. The extent that remain, most misprison statutes apply to failure to report a completed felony. Well, there's many of them. Though some states also punish the act of failing to report a future felony. In the few states where it is a crime, misprison is a misdemeanor. But we're talking federal misprison of felony here. Everybody that is an elected official or has special reasons why they should report because they were elected to do so. Okay? And if they don't, you know, they need to, you know, take on what goes on for the person that, you know, got screwed over. You know, whether he was murdered or whether he was burned out or whether he was bulldozed or whether he was just falsely imprisoned or whatever it is. And they turn their blank ear to it, you know, they need to be put in the shoes of the ones they're supposed to represent. That's what they're supposed to do, is represent you. To ensure your, you know, constitutional rights and everything else are upheld. And if not, those that are guilty of it are to be brought before the law. But it's them that are doing it. So people, please, you know, let's cry out against judgment. You know, let's cry out for judgment. Like Enoch said, send this video off to everyone you can if you would. And, you know, I love y'all. We've got to do something, you know. I mean, I'm tired of taking the brunt for these things, you know, but I guess that's what I'm supposed to do because our king said that they do the same to me as they did to him. You know, it's just they haven't nailed me to a tree yet, you know, but hopefully they'll come down and make a public execution, cut my head off, put me to rest, man. I'm sick of this shit. And I've asked for it in many of my court filings. I told them, just cut off my damn head, but they won't do it. Instead, they just torment me. Torment me. Tormenting days are about over. And the thing is, I've never resulted to violence. There's so many people out there shooting up schools and all kinds of crazy crap going on. Post offices and jobs and such, just because someone ate their sandwich or something, you know, that they were looking forward to the lunch, you know, and they come in with an M16, you know, AR-15, whatever, just knives and pizza cutters, whatever, you know, just to hurt and harm people. I've never done these things. I should be protected. I should have the same rights, you know, to live by and have for me as you do. And I don't. Now, why is this? President Trump, you know, I sent off to the White House these felonies, and I haven't got an answer back. I got an automated reply saying you'll get back with me last week sometime, I believe it was, and I haven't heard a word since. You know, so how far does these things have to go up? I'm going to tell you, Enoch said it's going to come about. This investigation is going to come about. There's a whole lot of people going to be, I'm not going to say harmed or damaged. They're going to get their righteous judgment put against them. You know, what they deserve is going to come on their own heads. I'm crying out, please don't let this come on your own head, you know. Please report it to some judge, law enforcement agency, and send me. Show me that you sent it to them, and I won't hold you liable. How could I? It'd be unrighteous. Just as unrighteous as you to keep your mouth shut, knowing about these things. But I love y'all, and I pray for you. I pray for you night and day. And I pray our King be merciful. I know he is, but he's only going to be merciful to those who show mercy. Chew on that for a while. Lawyer said it.